Have you ever been told you were destined for irrelevance? That your ambitions were a charming, but ultimately futile little hobby? My name is Riley Chen, and for 29 years, that was the anthem of my life, composed by my own family. But anthems can be rewritten. This isn't just a story about proving them wrong. It's about a secret legacy, a dangerous truth buried for decades, and a single night where the quietest voice in the room would speak with the power of a thunderclap. If you think you know what happens when the black sheep of the family turns out to be a wolf in disguise, think again. The truth is far more shocking. Before we begin, hit that like button if you've ever been made to feel small by the people who should have lifted you up. Now take a deep breath. You're about to witness a reckoning. And don't forget to comment where you're watching from. I want to feel the energy from every corner of the world. The Chin household in the pristine tree-lined streets of Lake Forest was not a home. It was a stage. And every day was a performance where my sister Madison was the star, and I was the stagehand, invisible and expected to be silent. The air was perpetually scented with my mother's prized gardenias and the faint metallic tang of polished accolades. Madison's debate trophies, her science fair ribbons, her acceptance letter to Northwestern, all displayed in the front hall like religious relics. My corner of the world was the sunroom at the back of the house, cluttered with my architectural sketches and city plans. To my family they were cute drawings. To me, they were blueprints for an escape I hadn't yet found the courage to launch. The night I declared my rebellion, the air was thick with the smell of slow-braised pork belly and my father's cigar. Madison had just detailed her plan to specialize in cardiothoracic surgery. The table erupted in praise. My daughter the heart surgeon. My father beamed, his chest puffed with pride. You'll be saving lives, Madison. Making a real difference. It was in that moment of adulation, with their defenses down, that I struck. I've decided on my major, I said, my voice cutting through the chatter. Urban planning and public policy at the University of Illinois. The silence was immediate and absolute. My mother set down her jade teacup with a sharp clink that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. Riley, be serious, she said, her voice a low, strained thing. That is not a career. It is a bureaucratic dead end. How do you plan to support yourself? How will you find a suitable husband? I plan to support myself by doing work that matters, I countered, my knuckles white as I gripped my napkin. We live in a city. These policies shape everything. The air we breathe, the roads we drive on, the equity of our communities. My father didn't even look at me. His gaze was fixed on Madison, as if seeking solace in her proven worth. Madison is going to be a surgeon, he stated, as if this fact alone invalidated my entire existence. She will hold a human heart in her hands. You want to what? Fill potholes. Argue about zoning laws. Then came Madison's dagger, delivered with a sweet, condescending smile. Maybe she can get a job at the DMV, Dad. She'd look cute in one of those vests. The family laughter was a wave that crashed over me, suffocating and warm with condescension. It wasn't the cruel laughter of malice, but the dismissive laughter of people who truly believed my dreams were a joke. I felt my face burn, but I held my ground, my jaw set. The true fracture, however, came later. I was retrieving a book from my father's study when I heard their muffled voices from the adjoining sitting room. The door was slightly ajar. A profound embarrassment, Margaret. My father's voice was a low, angry rumble. If she pursues this, what will the Wexlers think? Or the Van Horns? They'll assume we failed, that we couldn't steer her toward a respectable path. I know, David. My mother's voice was laced with anxiety. It reflects poorly on our parenting. Madison is our triumph, but Riley? She's a question mark. A liability. We need to find her a husband quickly. Someone with a stable, conventional career. A lawyer, perhaps. We need to contain this before she tarnishes the family name with this governmental nonsense. Liability. Contain. Tarnish. The words were colder than any outright insult. I wasn't a person with aspirations. I was a problem to be managed. a flaw in their perfect social veneer. In that moment, the last fragile thread of my familial loyalty snapped. I retreated from the door, my heart a block of ice in my chest. I went to the University of Illinois anyway, my defiance a quiet, burning ember in the pit of my stomach. My parents didn't come to my graduation. They were at Madison's white coat ceremony at Northwestern, a ritual that cemented her place as the family's primary investment. "We'll celebrate you another time, sweetie," my mother promised over a staticky phone connection. "You understand, Madison's ceremony is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Her achievement is just more significant." "I understand," I said, and I did. I was the background noise, the b-roll, the daughter who was simply less significant. But the ember of defiance was now a steady flame. I would build something so significant, so undeniably monumental, that their dismissal would become the greatest irony of their lives. I just didn't know then that the blueprint for my revenge was already written in a love story 50 years old. 5 years later, the chasm between my life and Madison's was a Grand Canyon of their own making. I was 24, toiling away as a junior policy analyst at the Coalition for Equitable Infrastructure, a noble but penniless non-profit. My salary was a joke, my apartment a shoebox, but my mind was a sponge, absorbing the intricate dance of politics, policy, and power that truly made a city run. Madison, freshly minted from her residency and glowing with engagement ring-induced radiance, was marrying Dr. Trevor Walsh. His family wasn't just wealthy. They were Chicago institution wealthy, their name on medical clinics, museum wings, and society pages. Their engagement party was held at the University Club, a fortress of old money and older traditions. I walked in, a sparrow among peacocks, in my 3-year-old Target dress. I'd taken extra care with my appearance, but standing next to Madison in her custom blush-colored La Perla cocktail dress, I felt like I'd arrived at a black tie gala in my pajamas. She floated over to me, a vision of curated perfection. "Riley, you're here," she said, air-kissing my cheek. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Listen, Trevor's mother is here. Eleanor Walsh is particular. The photos from tonight will be in the Tribune. Just try to blend in, okay? Maybe don't bring up the non-profit stuff. Talk about the weather. Or art. Art is safe." I was being given a script, and I was already failing by merely existing. I nodded mutely, the familiar sting of shame warming my cheeks. The dinner was a 7-course torture session. I was seated at a table near the kitchen, sandwiched between a walrus-like cardiologist who only spoke of golf and a brittle-looking hospital board member who smelled strongly of gin. When the board member, a Mrs. Shapiro, turned to me and asked, "And what do you do, dear?" I opened my mouth to answer. My father's voice, loud and clear, cut across the table from where he held court. "Riley is still finding her way, Helen. She works for a small non-profit. We're hopeful she'll find something more substantive soon." He gave a dismissive wave of his hand, as if swatting my entire career away like a gnat. "Policy work is substantive," I interjected, my voice firmer than I expected. "We're developing transit equity programs that could help thousands of low-income families access healthcare and employment opportunities." "That's nice, honey," my mother interrupted, her smile tight and panicked. She quickly turned to Trevor. "Darling, tell us about your new position at Northwestern Memorial. Chief resident is such an honor." I was shut down. Again. The conversation swept past me like I was a rock in a river. I focused on my salmon, the food tasting like ash in my mouth. But then, as I was making my escape, feeling defeated and invisible, a hand touched my elbow. I turned to find Eleanor Walsh herself. She was an elegant woman in her late 60s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through me. "Riley, isn't it?" she said, her voice low and surprisingly devoid of the condescension I'd expected. "Yes, Mrs. Walsh. Congratulations on the engagement." She gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. My late husband, Arthur, was a difficult man, but he was a great believer in infrastructure. He always said it was the skeleton of a society. Without a strong skeleton, the body collapses, no matter how beautiful the skin. Her eyes held mine, and for a fleeting moment I saw something there. Not pity, but a deep, resonant understanding. Ideals are not enough. They require a vehicle, capital, power. She discreetly pressed a crisp white business card into my palm. A friend owes me a favor. Her name is Rachel Silva. She's Governor Morrison's chief of staff. Owe her. Tell her I sent you. Her gaze intensified. And Riley, don't tell anyone. Especially not your family. Then she was gone, melting back into the crowd of glittering guests, leaving me standing alone, my heart hammering against my ribs. I looked down at the card. It was real. Why would this woman, the matriarch of the golden family my sister was marrying into, help me? Was it a test? A cruel joke? Or was it the key I had been desperately searching for? As I slipped the card into my clutch, I felt the first tremor of the earthquake that would soon shatter all of their perfectly constructed worlds. The ghost had just entered the room, and she had chosen me as her vessel. The call to Rachel Silva was the most nerve-wracking of my life. I expected a polite brush-off. Instead, I got a gruff, "Eleanor Walsh doesn't give out my number for coffee chats. Send me your CV and that white paper on equity you wrote. I'll have my assistant schedule something." The interview was not with HR. It was with Governor Patricia Morrison herself, in her sparse, utilitarian office in the state capitol. She was in her late 50s, with a no-nonsense haircut and eyes that missed nothing. "Your paper is good," she said, "not one for small talk. But it's naive. You talk about the right thing to do. In this building, the right thing gets chewed up and spat out before lunch. How do you get the right thing done when everyone has a different definition of right?" I took a deep breath, thinking of the political chessboard I'd been studying for years. "You find the intersection between their interests and your goals," I said. "The construction unions want jobs. The environmentalists want clean standards. You don't frame it as a choice. You create a policy where the jobs come from building the clean standards. You make their problem your solution." Governor Morrison leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Interesting. Rachel, get her on board. Junior policy advisor. I want her in the infrastructure working group." Just like that, my life changed. I told my family I'd gotten a promotion to a government liaison role, with a modest but stable salary increase. They offered vague, disinterested congratulations, clearly relieved I was no longer in the non-profit phase. Their ignorance was my fuel. My ascent was meteoric. I had a preternatural talent for the work. By 29, I was the director of infrastructure policy, overseeing a team of 43 in a $2.3 billion initiative. I negotiated with federal agencies, testified before hostile committees, and managed the egos of billion-dollar contractors. Governor Morrison called me her secret weapon. I bought my Lincoln Park condo, paid off my loans, and built an investment portfolio that would make a hedge fund manager nod with respect. But the secret of my success was only the first layer. The second, more profound secret was the one I uncovered about Eleanor Walsh. That strange, knowing look in her eyes at the engagement party haunted me. Driven by a gnawing curiosity, I began to dig. The official Walsh family history was a clean, corporate narrative. Arthur Walsh, shrewd businessman, builds a medical clinic empire. But in the digital archives of old Chicago newspapers, I found a ghost. Before Arthur, Eleanor was married to another man, Robert Chen. He wasn't a businessman. He was a visionary urban planner. In the early 1980s, he had championed the Starline project, a massive public transit expansion aimed at connecting the neglected South Side to the city's economic heart. The project was killed. The article cited budgetary concerns and shifting priorities, but a single op-ed from a since-retired journalist hinted at something darker. Powerful real estate interests had lobbied fiercely against it, fearing it would depress property values in the downtown core they owned. The primary opponent named was a consortium led by Arthur Walsh. Robert Chen died just a year after his life's work was dismantled. The official cause was a single car accident. The blog of the retired journalist, however, contained a throwaway line that made my blood run cold. Those who knew him said Chen was never the same after the Starline's defeat. The light went out. Some called it an accident. Others called it a broken heart. The pieces clicked into place with terrifying, tragic clarity. Eleanor Walsh hadn't helped me out of mere charity. She saw my passion, my chosen field, and it was a ghost from her past. The ghost of the brilliant, passionate man she had loved, whose dreams were crushed by the man she later married. Her help was an act of atonement, a desperate attempt to see Robert Chen's work live on, even if through the granddaughter of the woman I stopped my research hitting a wall. I knew Robert and my grandmother Li Hua Papi Chin had been close colleagues, but was there more? This secret was a live wire. I now held a piece of history that could not only humiliate the powerful Walsh family but also rewrite my own understanding of my beloved grandmother. I kept it locked away, a weapon of last resort. But the past, I was learning, has a way of demanding to be heard. The Morrison Infrastructure Initiative was my masterpiece. For 3 years I had lived and breathed its every detail. The environmental impact reports, the union negotiations, the painstaking budget allocations that would bring light rail to forgotten suburbs and clean water to struggling post-industrial towns. It was the Starline project, reborn, refined, and supercharged for a new century. The ghost of Robert Chen was in every line of the proposal. When Governor Morrison called me into her office 6 months before the wedding, I knew it was big. The air in her office crackled with a different energy than during my first interview. Back then, it was potential. Now it was power. "Riley, sit," she said, gesturing to the chair. She didn't mince words. "The initiative is a go. We're announcing at the spring gala. Full press corps, every political player in the state will be there. And you're not just presenting it." She paused, her sharp eyes locking onto mine. "I'm promoting you to Chief Policy Director. You'll be the face of this program alongside me." Title was one thing. The visibility was another. I had meticulously avoided the spotlight, a ghost in the machinery of state. "The face, ma'am. I'm not sure I'm the right." "You're the only one," she interrupted. "This program needs a leader people trust. You're young, you're brilliant, and you're clean. You haven't been tainted by the old boys club. You're the future." She leaned forward, her voice dropping, becoming unervingly personal. "And in my speech, I'm introducing you as the daughter I never had." The words stole the air from my lungs. They were a balm and a brand, healing the wound of my family's rejection while simultaneously marking me for their scrutiny. I thought of my parents, of Madison, the chaos this would unleash. "Governor, that's an incredible honor. But my family." "I know about your family, Riley," she said, her gaze softening a fraction. "Rachel did her due diligence. I know they've never seen your worth. Let them see it now. Let them see what they missed while they were busy admiring gilded frames." Her words were a permission slip for a reckoning I'd been too afraid to initiate myself. I accepted, my heart a wild drum against my ribs. I walked out of her office, my head spinning. I pulled out my phone to mark the gala on my calendar, and that's when I saw it, already saved with a string of flower and ring emojis. Madison's wedding. April 15th. Same day. Same city. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a collision course set by the universe. But the first tremor of the coming earthquake hit 3 weeks before the wedding. The text from Madison was expected. The uninvitation was a painful, clean cut. "Madison, Riley, don't come to my wedding. Your presence would ruin our photos." My response was a simple, cold, "Okay." Her immediate, "I knew you'd understand. Thanks for being mature about this," was the final confirmation of my insignificance in her world. Then my phone buzzed again. An unknown number. The message was stark, terrifying, and changed the entire game. "Unknown. She doesn't know I'm contacting you. It's Eleanor. Do not, under any circumstances, reveal what you know about Robert Chen. Arthur's business partners from the old days are still powerful, and they are dangerous. They are watching. Your success is revenge enough. Stay away from the wedding. It's not a request. It's for your protection. The phone slipped from my sweaty hand, clattering onto my marble kitchen counter. Dangerous. Protection. This wasn't about social embarrassment anymore. This was about something darker, something buried. Eleanor wasn't just atoning for a broken heart. She was warning me about a threat that had survived her husband. The quiet policy director was now standing at the edge of a conspiracy she barely understood. April 15th dawned, a perfect, crisp spring day in Chicago. Two realities existed in parallel, separated by a few miles and a chasm of intention. In a penthouse suite at the Peninsula Hotel, Madison was being transformed into a bride. The air was thick with the scent of hairspray and expensive perfume. My mother fluttered around her, adjusting the cathedral-length veil on a gown that cost more than my first car. "She's not coming," Madison stated, looking at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. It wasn't a question. "She said she wouldn't," my mother replied, her voice tight. "Let's not dwell on it, darling. Today is about you and Trevor." "It's just better this way," Madison said, though a flicker of something, doubt? Guilt, crossed her perfectly made-up face. Meanwhile, in my Lincoln Park condo, a different kind of preparation was underway. My stylist was creating a look not of a blushing bride, but of a powerful leader. A sleek, low chignon, makeup that accentuated my features without hiding the sharp intelligence in my eyes. I stood before my own mirror, slipping into the emerald Jason Wu gown. It wasn't just a dress. It was a statement. It whispered of money, of taste, of a power that didn't need to shout. My phone buzzed on the vanity. It was my father. "Dad. Riley, your mother is very upset. Is there any chance you can make a brief appearance? Just for the family photos before the ceremony. We can explain your early departure." The audacity was breathtaking. They didn't want me. They wanted the prop, the placeholder to complete their perfect family portrait. I didn't respond. The silence was my answer. An hour later, another text. This one was from Trevor. "Trevor. Riley, I know this is a terrible time, but I need to talk to you. It's about my mother. She's been acting strangely for weeks. She gave me a sealed envelope last night. She told me to give it to you if anything happened to her. She said it's about your grandmother. She said the words Starlene. Do you know what that means?" My blood ran cold. An envelope. If anything happened to her. Eleanor wasn't just warning me. She was preparing for a confrontation. She had passed the baton to her son, pulling him into a secret he knew nothing about. The past was closing in fast and furious. I typed back, my fingers trembling. I can't talk now, Trevor. Keep the envelope safe. Don't tell anyone you have it. Not even Madison." His response was immediate. "Trevor. This is serious, isn't it?" More than you can imagine." I put the phone down, my heart hammering. The gala was no longer just about my career or proving my family wrong. It was a shield. A very public, very powerful shield. I would be on stage with the governor of Illinois, surrounded by the press and the entire state political apparatus. No one would dare touch me there. The gala was my fortress, and I was about to wage a war from its battlements. The Chicago Hilton was a vortex of light, sound, and power. I moved through the cocktail hour in a daze, shaking hands, accepting congratulations, all while my mind was screaming, "Starlene! Protection! Grandmother!" Senator Martinez gripped my hand. "Riley, big night. Your equity model is a work of art." "Thank you, Senator," I said, my voice on autopilot. My eyes scanned the crowd, not for allies but for threats. Was one of these smiling, tuxedoed men one of Arthur Walsh's dangerous old partners? I delivered my speech, my voice steady, my points crisp. But during the press Q&A, my focus was split. As I answered a question about federal funding, my phone, tucked into my clutch, vibrated with a specific pattern I'd set for Trevor. He was calling. I ignored it, my smile never wavering. It rang again and again. A relentless, pulsing alarm bell from the wedding. The second the formal program ended, I ducked into a secluded alcove backstage. Had to know. I called the retired journalist, the one who had written about Robert Chen. I offered him a substantial donation for 5 minutes of his time. Robert Chen. His raspy voice came down the line. Yeah, brilliant man. A tragedy. But the real story was his partner. His partner? Asked, my throat tight. Yeah, the woman who handled all the community outreach. She was fierce. Force of nature. When the project died, she was devastated. They were more than colleagues, you know. Everyone knew it. She was his rock. After he died, she used her own life savings to try and fund smaller versions of his vision. Never gave up. Lovely woman. Immigrated from Taiwan. Her name was Li Hua. Everyone called her Papia. The world stopped. The noisy gala faded into a distant hum. More than colleagues. His rock. Never gave up. Her last name. I whispered, already knowing, already feeling the ghost of her hand on my shoulder. Chin, he said. Li Hua Chin. I slumped against the wall, the phone pressed to my ear. The woman who baked me mooncakes and told me stories of Taiwan had been in love with a visionary. She hadn't just given me her savings. She had given me her unfinished love story. The $50,000 was a widow's mite, an investment in avenging the man she loved and finishing the work they had started together. The Morrison Initiative wasn't my legacy. It was theirs. I was merely the instrument. Eleanor Walsh knew. She knew the depth of the relationship. Her help was a triangulation of guilt, atonement, and a shared silent pact with my grandmother to see Robert Chen's dream live. The weight of it was crushing and magnificent. While I was having this earth-shattering revelation, the carefully constructed world of the Peninsula Hotel was imploding. The news about my role broke first. A guest's phone buzzed with the Tribune alert. Then another. A low murmur swept through the cocktail hour, crescendoing as photos of me on stage with the governor were passed around. Madison, resplendent in her ivory gown, initially brushed it off. It's probably some minor award, she sniffed to a bridesmaid. But then Trevor found her, his face ashen. He pulled her into a small antechamber, the sealed envelope from his mother clutched in his hand. We have a problem, he said, his voice strained. A big one. What is it? Is it Riley? Is she trying to upstage me? It's worse than that, Madison. My mother, she gave me this last night. She told me about her first husband, a man named Robert Chen. He was an urban planner. My grandfather, Arthur, is the one who had his project killed. Broke him. He died a year later. Madison stared at him, uncomprehending. What does that have to do with anything? Robert Chen was in love with Riley's grandmother, Madison. They were partners. Your grandmother funded Riley's education with her life savings to finish his work. My mother has been secretly helping Riley's career as some kind of penance. Riley's success is a direct repudiation of my family. We're the villains in her story. The color drained from Madison's face. Her perfect day, her perfect marriage, was built on a foundation of her own family's cruelty and her in-laws' corruption. The sister she had dismissed as a failure was not only a celebrated public servant, but a righteous avenger for a decades-old wrong. The scene in the ballroom descended into chaos. My parents, trying to maintain a facade of calm, were besieged. Did you know about your daughter's role, David? Is it true there's a feud with the Walsh family over an old infrastructure project? Where is Riley? Why isn't she here? Their answers were evasive, pathetic. We didn't know. We're so proud. She had a prior commitment. The more they talked, the guiltier they looked. The society photographers, initially there for a wedding, now had a front row seat to a scandal of epic proportions. The beautiful, aesthetic wedding photos Madison had been so desperate to protect were now forever tainted by the shocking truth of why her sister was absent. My parents found me in the Hilton lobby. They looked like survivors of a shipwreck, their formal attire seeming like costumes they'd forgotten they were wearing. You, my father spat, his composure shattered. You have humiliated this family beyond repair. Have I? I said, my voice eerily calm, fueled by the profound truth I now carried. Or have I simply held up a mirror? And you finally don't like what you see? My mother was crying. Riley, how could you do this? On your sister's day. You mean the sister who uninvited me? The day you all agreed I would ruin. I took a step closer, my emerald gown making me feel like an avenging queen. But this was never just about me, was it? Did you know that Pipia was in love with a man named Robert Chen? Did you know that Arthur Walsh, Trevor's grandfather, deliberately destroyed his life's work, and that he died of a broken heart? My mother's hand flew to her mouth. She never spoke of him. Of course she didn't, I said, the words dripping with a lifetime of pain. The heartbreak was too great. But she gave me her life savings, her entire being, to finish what he started. So you see, this isn't my success. It's Papo's. It's Robert Chen's. It's a promise fulfilled 50 years later. You didn't just underestimate me. You underestimated her. You dismissed the greatest love story of her life as irrelevant, just like you dismissed me. My mother broke down completely, her sobs echoing in the marble lobby. The truth was a wrecking ball, and it had finally hit its mark. The foundation of their entire worldview, that prestige and social standing were everything, was exposed as a hollow, cruel joke. I turned and walked away, not just from them, but from the ghost of their expectations. I was no longer Riley Chen, the disappointment. I was Riley Chen, the legacy bearer. And I had a promise to keep. The truth is out. The wedding is in ruins. Riley stands victorious, having weaponized a decades-old secret to shatter her family's illusions. But in the quiet after the storm, new questions arise. What happens when the initial shock wears off? And what is the final, devastating piece of the puzzle hidden within the envelope Trevor holds? The story is far from over. The weeks following the gala were a study in surreal contrasts. For me, it was a whirlwind of professional triumph. The Morrison Infrastructure Initiative was lauded as a landmark achievement. My name became synonymous with a new, hopeful kind of politics, competent, equitable, and young. I did the rounds on national media, my story of quiet perseverance resonating with millions. The clip of me saying, "I'm accountable to the 12.7 million people of Illinois," became a viral sensation, a rallying cry for anyone who had ever been underestimated. But the true victory was private. In my Lincoln Park condo, I spread out Papo's love letter to Robert Chen and his original Starline schematics. I traced the lines of his handwriting, feeling a connection that transcended time. I wasn't just a policy director. I was a curator of a lost dream. I began working discreetly with a historian to ensure Robert Chen's name would be permanently etched into the initiative, planning the Robert Chen and Li Chin Memorial Fellowship for young planners from underserved communities. For my family, however, the aftermath was a public execution of their reputation. The society pages that should have celebrated Madison's wedding instead dissected the Chin-Walsh feud. The narrative was brutal. The golden child and her prestigious family, exposed as shallow, cruel, and historically complicit in a great civic tragedy. My parents became ghosts at their own country club, met with either pitying looks or outright avoidance. Their constant refrain of "we didn't know" now sounded like a confession of willful ignorance. Madison's marriage to Trevor began in a bunker of shared humiliation. The beautiful Lake Forest home they moved into felt more like a gilded prison. The whispered conversations at their few social outings were never about them, but always about the sister who wasn't there. The photos from their wedding day, once meant to be a testament to their perfect union, were now a painful reminder of their greatest miscalculation. Trevor especially was adrift. The revelation about his grandfather had shaken his identity to its core. The Walsh medical legacy, once a source of pride, now felt tainted. He carried the weight of his mother's secret and the envelope she had entrusted to him, an unopened Pandora's box that sat in his study, haunting him. 2 months after the wedding, a package arrived at my office by certified mail. It wasn't from my parents or Madison. It was from Trevor. Inside was a note in his precise doctor's handwriting. Riley, I won't pretend to understand the full scope of the pain my family has caused yours. I've spent weeks grappling with the man my grandfather was, and the silence my mother kept. I've enclosed the envelope she gave me. I haven't opened it. I believe it belongs to you. I also need you to know that I confronted my mother. It's not well. The stress of this coming to light has taken a toll. She's staying at a private clinic north of the city. She asked me to tell you she's sorry. For everything. Madison is struggling. What she did to you was wrong, but she is my wife and I see her pain. I'm not asking for forgiveness for any of us. I'm just asking you to know that the consequences of that night are far from over. Rever. My hands trembled as I held the thick, yellowed envelope. Eleanor was in a clinic. The formidable matriarch, brought low by the ghosts she'd tried to outrun. I felt a pang of complicated sympathy. She was a victim of Arthur Walsh, too, in her own way. That evening, in the sanctity of my home, I finally opened it. Contained more than I could have imagined. There were more love letters between Pippa and Robert, revealing a depth of passion and intellectual partnership that made my heart ache. But beneath them was a sealed, smaller envelope, addressed in a shaky hand to Eleanor. And beneath that was a legal document that made my blood run cold. It was a signed affidavit from a private investigator, dated a week before Robert Chen's death. It stated that Arthur Walsh had not only lobbied against the Starline project, but had also orchestrated a campaign of personal and professional sabotage against Robert, including planting false evidence of financial mismanagement and spreading rumors of an affair to drive a wedge between him and Pippa. The final line of the affidavit was a stark warning. Subject, Arthur Walsh, has been heard making threatening remarks regarding Mr. Chen's stubbornness. I believe Mr. Chen's safety may be at risk. The car accident may not have been an accident at all. It might have been murder. The final item was the smaller envelope. Opened it. It was a letter from Eleanor to PP, written after Robert's death. It was a confession, a plea for forgiveness, filled with self-loathing and regret for choosing security and social standing over love. She wrote of Arthur's controlling cruelty and her own cowardice. The letter ended with a vow. I cannot bring him back, Li Hua. But I swear to you, I will find a way to see his dream live. I owe that to you both. She had kept her promise. Frumi. I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by the ghosts of these two women, bound together by their love for the same man and their shared enemy. The weight of it was immense. This was no longer just a story of career triumph. It was a decade-spanning saga of love, betrayal, and a debt finally paid. While I was grappling with this new, darker truth, Madison was undergoing her own private hell. The facade of the perfect life had cracked, and what was underneath was terrifyingly hollow. She had become a doctor to please our parents, married Trevor to secure her social position, and now both felt like gilded cages. She started calling me. At first, the calls were angry, blaming me for destroying her happiness. Then they became pleading, desperate. I let them all go to voicemail, creating an audio diary of her descent. How could you do this to me, Riley? Everyone is laughing at me. Mom won't stop crying. Dad just sits in his study and drinks. This is your fault. Trevor is distant. He looks at me like he doesn't know who I am. Riley, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was jealous. I've always been jealous. You were always so sure of yourself, even when they mocked you. I never had that. Please. I have no one to talk to. The final voicemail was the one that broke through my resolve. Her voice was a raw, broken whisper. I went to see a therapist. She said I've built my entire identity on being the successful one. She asked me what's left now that that's gone. Really? I didn't have an answer. I have nothing. I saved that voicemail. I didn't call her back, but I didn't delete it. It was the first time I had ever heard my sister sound like a real, vulnerable human being, and not the caricature of success our parents had created. The pressure finally became too much. A week later, Trevor called me, his voice thick with panic. Riley, it's Madison. She checked herself into Silver Oaks. It's a psychiatric facility. She's safe, but she's not well. She asked for you. Her golden child had broken. And in her breaking, a tiny, fragile bridge between us began to form, not from a place of strength, but from a place of shared, broken humanity. I stood outside Silver Oaks, my courage faltering. I hadn't spoken to Madison since the text uninviting me. What could I possibly say? I found her in a sun-drenched common room, curled up in an armchair, looking small and young in her sweatpants. The flawless makeup, the designer clothes, the air of superiority, all were gone. This was just Madison, my sister. She looked up as I approached. Her eyes were red-rimmed but clear. "You came," she whispered. "I came," I said, sitting in the chair opposite her. The silence was heavy, but not hostile. "I'm sorry, Riley," she said, the words simple and stark. "Not just for the wedding. For everything. For every time I made you feel small so I could feel big." "I know," I said. "I listened to your voicemails." She looked down at her hands. "The therapist says I have to figure out who I am without all of that. Without being the successful Chen daughter. It's terrifying. I don't know who that is." "Maybe," I said gently. "You get to decide now. For the first time." I didn't offer empty platitudes. I didn't absolve her. But I offered her a truth she'd never considered. The freedom of starting over. Then I did something I never thought I would. I told her about Papi and Robert Chen. I told her about the love letters, the sabotaged project, the affidavit suggesting Arthur Walsh might have been involved in his death. I showed her Eleanor's letter to our grandmother. Her eyes widened in horror as the story unfolded. The petty social dynamics of our childhood were suddenly cast in the shadow of a genuine, epic tragedy. "All this time," she breathed. "All this time we were worried about wedding photos and country club gossip. And you were carrying this." "It wasn't just me," I said. "Papa carried it her whole life. Eleanor carried it." I just finished the story. For the first time, I saw not jealousy or resentment in her eyes, but respect. Or even. She finally saw the scale of what I had been a part of. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I'm going to build the Robert Chan and Li Hua Chin Memorial Fellowship," I said. "And I'm going to make sure the world knows their story." A single tear traced a path down her cheek. "That's beautiful, Riley." It was the first genuine, unqualified compliment she had ever given me. Bolstered by the fragile connection with Madison, I faced my next daunting task, visiting my parents. I found them in their Lake Forest home, which felt cavernous and empty. The trophies were still in the hall, but they now looked like artifacts from a lost civilization. My father looked old. My mother's eyes were perpetually swollen. "Riley," my mother said, her voice fragile. We heard about Madison." "I saw her," I said. "She's going to be okay." I didn't wait for them to speak. I laid out copies of the documents, the love letters, the affidavit, Eleanor's confession. I watched as they read, their faces shifting from confusion to dawning horror. "My God," my father whispered, sinking into his armchair. "Li Hua, she never said a word." "Why would she?" I asked, not with anger, but with a profound sadness. "You made it clear that only certain kinds of achievements, certain kinds of lives, were worthy of your attention. Her great love, her partner's grand civic vision. It didn't fit the narrative. So she buried it, and she gave it to me." My mother began to weep, great, heaving sobs of grief, not for their social standing, but for the mother she felt she never truly knew, and for the daughter she had failed to see. "We were wrong," my father said, the words seeming to cost him everything. "We were so wrong. About everything." It wasn't the triumphant moment I had once fantasized about. It was just sad. But in that sadness, there was a seed of something new. Honesty. A year passed. The Morrison Infrastructure Initiative was a roaring success, and the Robert Chan and Li Hua Chin Fellowship welcomed its first 5 brilliant, diverse students. At the inauguration ceremony, I told their story to a packed auditorium. The governor was there, her arm linked with mine. In the front row sat a hesitant, but present David and Margaret Chen. Madison was there too, holding Trevor's hand. She was studying to become a medical therapist, wanting to help people with their minds, not just their bodies. She had found her own path. After the ceremony, I drove north to the lakeside clinic. I found Eleanor Walsh in the gardens, wrapped in a blanket, looking out at the water. She looked up as I approached. "Riley," she said, a faint smile touching her lips. "I saw the news. You did it. You really did it." "We did it," I corrected softly, sitting beside her. "You and Papa. I was just the contractor." I took her hand. It was cold and frail. "I read your letter to her," I said. "You kept your promise." Tears filled her eyes. "It was the least I could do. It could never be enough." "It was everything," I said. "It changed my life. And it's going to change the lives of countless others." We sat in silence for a long time, two women connected by a legacy of love and loss, watching the sun set over the lake. The debt was paid. The story was complete. My family is different now. It's quieter, more real. There are no more grand performances. My parents are slowly, tentatively learning who I am, and I am learning to let them. Madison and I are not best friends, but we are sisters. Talk. We listen. We have a history that is no longer a competition, but a shared, complicated story. Trevor and I have an unshakable bond, forged in the fire of his family's secret. He has become one of my most trusted confidants. And Governor Morrison. She was right. I do have a family with her. I spend holidays with her and her sons. She walks me through the challenges of leadership and life with a steadying hand. My sister texted that my presence would ruin her wedding photos. She was wrong. My absence didn't ruin them. It redefined them. It forced everyone to look beyond the frame, to see the ugly, beautiful, complicated truth that was always there. I didn't just build an infrastructure program. I helped rebuild my family. Not into what it was, but into what it could be. And that, I've learned, is the most lasting legacy of all. And that, my friends, is the end of our journey. If this story of resilience, legacy, and the complicated road to forgiveness moved you, please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more powerful stories. Tell me in the comments, what was the most powerful moment for you? Thank you for watching. Remember, your quiet work is powerful, and your story is still being written.